Hi, Dan here. Hope you're doing really well. In this lesson, I'm going to talk to you about a few ideas that you need to think about in order to become a good bass player. And I know when you learn online that there can be lots of information hitting you from a million different areas and you just don't even know where to start. So I just want to start by reading this great quote from a guy called John Reed. I don't really even know who that is, but it's a brilliant quote. When you first start to study a field, it seems like you have to memorize a zillion things. You don't. What you need is to identify the core principles, generally 3 to 12 of them, that govern the field. The million things you thought you had to memorize are simply various combinations of the core principles. Now, when I read this quote, it really resonated with me because the way I teach is to think about core principles of bass playing. I'm going to share that with you today because I think it's going to really help you. I'm also going to try my best not to ramble because there is a lot to talk about. I've got a blog post that goes into most of what I'm talking about in far more detail, so I'll put the link below. There's no sign up, it's all free, but then there's loads of information that's going to last you a long time. But this is how I think about it. We've got these sort of roughly 7 core concepts of bass playing, and on the left is just representation of how it seems when you don't really know it very well. There's just all these ideas floating around, and on the right there is what happens when you learn a few of these things, and when you gain a little bit of experience, they all start to coalesce and they form this real strong connection, and you can just see bass playing in a much easier light. Now, I know that's a bit strange to, if you don't know some of these ideas. So that's really what I'm going to talk about. And really, we're going to start off with one of the areas that I think is most important. I just wrote a book about it, and that's technique. If your technique is good, and if you're really confident with holding the bass and playing, then you're not going to struggle, you're not going to stumble, you're not going to get frustrated. It's the complete opposite of that. You're going to gain momentum. So make sure you're holding the bass properly. If you're doing finger style, just if I'm, for example, playing, just playing a G Dorian and a G minor pentatonic scale there. Now, in order to express myself as I'm doing there, I need good technique. So just work on that. Really, really focus on that. I've actually written 2 books on that because in terms of what you practice, you've probably heard those types of exercises before. It doesn't really matter what you play. I personally believe that you need to practice things that make you think, oh, that sounds good, because that's going to make you want to practice. It's going to make you carry on. The minor pentatonic scale, such a good one, because it sounds good and you can improvise at the same time. But just focus on technique. Make sure that your hands are coordinated and you don't have to play anything difficult. Obviously, if you go, you got slap, and you've got, I haven't got a plectrum, but if you're playing with a plectrum, the same principles apply. And I'll move on to the next topic, which is timing. Anything that you play needs to be played in time. And timing, groove, feel. You've got to think about subdividing the beats. Okay, so that's tapping your foot and being aware of the beats. These are quarter notes. 8ths are da 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 da, and 16th. You've got 4 in every beat. You've got to be really aware of that. And you've got to know those inside out. And you're not rushing, you're not slowing down, you're playing bang in time. As I mentioned, the link below will show you some exercises and some free drum beats that you can use to practice this. And one thing I'm doing here is I'm just playing a bunch of scales going across the fretboard. That's another thing to think about, is fretboard knowledge. So it's just breaking out of patterns that you might only know. 1 octave minor pentatonic scale. Well, if you know where G's are across the bass, and you should definitely start with E, A, D, G, knowing your strings, and then figure out where the notes are, you can play the same patterns. That's a blues scale. And because the bass is built the way it is, we have patterns and we can use those to our advantage. So even just playing what I'm playing here and just improvising, I am really focusing on technique. I can't really play this well if my technique is not there. Okay, so that's why I've worked on it hard, so I can then forget about it. In fact, that's what you do with all of these ideas. You work on them enough so that you then don't have to think about them. So I've got the technique, but the technique is really nothing without timing. And so you've got to learn to play in time, and also not to play like a robot, and that's feel. And because we're humans, we will have that. We will have that natural, maybe slightly ahead of the beat, behind the beat. That's absolutely cool. That's what makes it sound good. I've got hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides. That's a bend. And that's vibrato. And these are kind of expressive articulations. That's something definitely that you should add into your technique to make you sound a bit more sophisticated, a bit more professional, a bit more soulful, you know, all these words. So I'm using shapes, I'm playing in time, and I'm relying on my technique. So when I'm talking minor pentatonic, Dorian, that's your music theory. This is the nuts and bolts of music. It's also your study of rhythm. This is an area of music I really recommend that you focus on. It's something that definitely changed my life. I had decent technique when I started nearly 30 years ago now, but I didn't know anything about the theory side of things. And so that held my ear back actually as well, because if you study theory, you maybe get exposed to Dorian mode. Now, whereas I only knew at that time the G natural minor scale, and so when I was playing with other musicians and they were playing Dorian, I couldn't really recognize that because I hadn't learned it and my ear just wasn't good enough. So a little study of theory just sort of opens up so many doors for you. So I really recommend you do that. What I recommend you do is just know a major scale off by heart. So let's say F major. Because you can learn intervals, that's the distance between pitches. That's 5, 5 up from the first note. The 6th is the following note after the 5th. There's a root, that's the lowest note, a 5th and a 6th. So if you learn those intervals and you learn the sound of them, then you listen to them. That happens a lot in soul music. You listen to soul music, and even without your bass anywhere near you, you can hear a 5th and a major 6th. So that's what I really recommend you do. Learn your intervals, learn your major scale. A major scale has a relative minor, which is built from the same notes, but just starting on the 6th. That's your natural minor. That's why I knew the major and the natural minor. I didn't know anything else. Take away the 4th and 7th notes of the major scale. You get a major pentatonic. And that's the minor version. So your major gives you a relative minor, and both those scales have a pentatonic, but they're all pretty much the same notes. That's what I would learn first, because it covers probably 80% of music. It just sounds great as well. But then you go into things like modes. If you play an F major scale from the 2nd note, you get this G Dorian that I was just improvising with. It sounds really funky, and I love that sound. That's why you would do that. And then, you know, if we're going levels here, you want to get into jazz, you would want to learn a melodic minor scale. You get this sort of exotic, dissonant sound. So there are levels of this, and I won't go too much. I could talk about theory for hours, but it really opens up doors for you in terms of note selections, what to play over what chords, and it's actually really, really fun. And when you start from the basics, I'm actually writing a course on this right now, so do subscribe to learn more about that. But once you go from the basics and you just layer things on top of the other, everything becomes so much clearer, and your ear will get much better. And that's a really, really important point. Listen to lots of different styles of music. Learn as many bass lines as you can by ear. Try to connect what you're hearing with what you're learning. You know, I didn't talk about triad, first, third, fifth. You could do that first, third, fifth on any note of the scale. Two, 5, 1 is the chord or arpeggio built on the 2. 5 built on the 5. Very common jazz progression, very easy once you start to think about music theory. Pino Palladino is one of the greatest bass players of all time. He doesn't read a note of music, so you do not need to read music to be a good bass player. I hear that a lot, actually. People say, oh, I can't read music, so I'm not going to be good. And it's just like complete myth. If you've got a good ear and you can just figure stuff out yourself and good technique, you'll be a great bass player. However, if you can read music, it does open up a lot of doors for you, especially studying rhythms. You know, here are some rhythms here, and if you understand visually, they look different. You know, once you understand what those things mean, you can study rhythms and you can self-learn much more easily. You can just take some music and just play it because you understand it. Bit more of a commitment, obviously, than it is to learn tab. If you want to play it as a professional one day, then definitely you need to read music. It'll open up more work for you. Playing in theatre bands, doing sessions, if there is any more of that work ever again, you can do that. You know, dropping into rehearsal bands, playing on church on the Sunday, I would recommend that you learn to read the dots and you learn to read charts, and it's so much that you can teach yourself by doing that. I touched on learning songs by ear, and you can use all these principles in one. If you learn to play along to an actual song, you have to play in time. Your technique has to be good enough. And if you can try and think about what some of the theory things are going on, you know, for example, Come Together. That's a D. D minor. So you figure out that you're in the key of D minor. If you're playing this, probably just learn it exactly as it is, exactly as McCartney played it. But if you want to fill, you know that you're in D minor, so you can use these shapes, fretboard knowledge again, and you can gain an understanding from that song. Let's do another one. Now that is just the Dorian mode, going up E. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. That's going to the 5 chord. It's following a very formulaic, easy to learn once you get it pattern, and once you know that, you can sort of learn from that. Let's do another one. Billie Jean, that's F sharp there. Very similar to Come Together, you've got this minor pentatonic thing going. And whilst you're playing, you're listening to the song, you fill in the gaps. A good place to start is that major and natural minor I was talking about that covers a lot of music. F sharp, natural minor here. So all these notes belonging to the key you find in the song. And so, I mean, it's not really as simple as that, because you've got to put in the work to ignore the tab sites and the YouTube channels like mine that are telling you exactly how to play something. And you just sit down with your own ears, your bass, and you try and figure this stuff out. But a little bit of doing that goes a long way. So I'd really recommend you sit down and you do this every day. Just learn your favorite songs. Which brings me to my most important point, which is your mindset and how you practice. Now, I'm lucky enough to get emails and comments every day from people around the world, and most people that watch this channel and go onto my site are beginners or intermediate players. I get a lot of people that have played for sometimes decades, and they're coming back to bass after a long time away. And everyone's busy, and we all are. I'm lucky to do this full time. Not YouTube. I am a full-time bass player, and I play a lot recording, no live work at the moment because of a pandemic, and also, in fact, I moved to a different country. But I do this full time. I'm able to play my bass every day, and I know not everyone can do that. But it doesn't matter if you're incredibly busy and you've got, kids or whatever. Believe me, I know that takes up a lot of time. You have to invest some time in getting good if that's what you want to do. Even 10 minutes pretty much every day is going to get you much better than 1 hour every Sunday. Commitment, consistency. So how you approach this whole thing is going to really help you. But the ideas I've spoken about and the ideas that you'll find in that blog post, they're absolutely 100% going to help you. These are the ideas that are going to make you a better bass player in any genre. And sometimes I don't like to commit to saying things like that because there's always, someone that does things differently. This is absolutely it. There are no shortcuts. There are no hacks. All of this stuff is going to take you a fair bit of time to get together. I hope that you know that. Of course you know that. You're not stupid. But you do need to know what areas to look at, and this is it. So I hope that this video helped. Go over to the blog post. There's a lot there that's going to keep you busy. Dive into it. Maybe watch the video again if you need to think about some of these points. But there's so much there that will help you, that you can learn. And I want to hear how you get on. So just, comment or get in touch, via the website or Twitter or whatever, wherever you are. And, let me know how you're getting on, because we love playing bass, don't we? I want to get better. You want to get better. And we need to do it smart. You need to look at these areas, think about these sort of ideas coalescing, and the more experience, the more work you put into it, I promise you it'll get much easier. Thanks very much for watching. Please do like, subscribe, share the video if you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.